I have the great pleasure to introduce a dear friend of mine from college, Dr. Stephen Stunder. Dr. Stunder has over 17 years of experience in the human services field, holding roles as an outpatient therapist, a case manager, a social worker, a school psychologist, and an administrator. He's a licensed professional counselor and board certified counselor, specializing in autism spectrum support for adolescents and adults. Dr. Stunder has worked with major mental health providers in the Philadelphia area and served as director of counseling at Holy Ghost Preparatory School for 9 years. He has also taught in the counseling psychology graduate program at Rosemont College and has been a faculty member at Chestnut Hill College for over 5 years. He now serves as the executive director of the Life Skills Through Career program and the director of Neurodiversity initiatives. His research and publications focus on developing learning difference programming and curricular for programming for students and adults with developmental disabilities. He has authored a textbook and serves on the editorial board of the Interdisciplinary Journal for Advances in Research in Education. So I am very pleased to turn it over to Dr. Stunder. And Steve, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Jamie, thank you. No, I'm happy to be here, and I want to take this opportunity to go through what it is we're doing here at Chestnut Hill College and how it applies to what it is you all may be looking for if you are an administrator, if you are a parent, if you are a person who is looking to support a student who's looking to get a college degree who is neurodivergent, and also talk a little bit about the other program that we are creating here at Chestnut Hill for life skills for adults 21 and over. We're really trying to we're creating programs, but we're really creating an initiative. And I see that as a culture. We're trying to create a culture here at Chestnut Hill where we want to be a destination for the neurodiverse population, students and adults, and staff members. We want people that want to learn about best practices for this population to come here and work with us on these different things. A very, very brief history lesson as to how we got here. So when I was hired as a faculty member at Chestnut Hill 6 years ago now, I was coming out of being a practitioner. So I'm not a lifelong academic. I became an academic by accident. I worked as a guidance counselor for 9 years, as Jamie said, at Holy Ghost Prep in Bensalem. And when I was getting my doctorate, I was doing kind of parallel research for my doctoral dissertation, but also to create programming at Holy Ghost, because independent schools typically do not have programs for students with learning needs. They do now, but back in 2015, 16, 17, we really did not. And so having created that program, I left that job and I went back into working in mental health, and I was working with adults. I ran an adult day program at Melmark in Berwyn. And now that experience of leaving there and then coming to be a faculty member, I was teamed with an interdisciplinary group of people, administrators and faculty, because our vice president of academics had challenged us to come up with some ideas to create something on a satellite campus that we had. And it was originally supposed to be a residential program where individuals would come to Chestnut Hill for 2 years and get vocational and life skills and things of that nature. We've pivoted, turned that into a day program now. But we also created the undergraduate program because, again, we didn't have formalized supports for students on the spectrum. We had a center, we had a disability services center, which we now call the Center for Accessibility and Learning Services. And students could go there and get supports, but nothing was formal. They had limited accommodations, limited resources. And again, it was one of those cases where we as a college, we had an Office of Disability Services, but just because you have an Office of Disability Services doesn't mean it's good. Doesn't mean that the resources, that it's resources. Just like every public school on the planet has special education services, that doesn't mean they're good ones. So one of the things that we wanted to do was really create a much more robust set of services for our students. And that's going to be what I'm going to take you through with regard to our programming here. So as we mentioned before, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to share with you what I shared with Sammy and Jamie. Wow, Sandy and Jamie before we got started. When I share the presentation, I'm not going to be able to see you. So if you put your virtual hand up or you put something in the chat, I'm not ignoring you. I can't see it. So at certain points, maybe we'll come back and we'll have a little bit of a chat. I also have a list of questions that I was given beforehand. Most of them should be answered by the presentation, but I want to make sure to go through them when we're done and make sure I address all of the questions that people have, because it's also not lost on me that we're recording this, and there might be questions from people who are not here, but they submitted a question, and then if they watch it, they want to make sure that it gets answered. So please feel free to ask questions as we go, but just recognize that since we're online, it's going to maybe take a minute for me to get to it. All right, sound good? All right, so everybody stand by. I'm going to share this presentation. Hopefully this goes seamlessly, and then we can get started. All right, so give me just 1 second because it's going to share my other screen when I start this. Great. Okay. I got to move a couple of things around on the screen here, so just stand by for me for 1 second. All right. So this is neurodivergent students on their journey to college success, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the model that we use here at Chestnut Hill. So this is my background. This is what Jamie just shared with all of you. I'm not going to read this, but I also think it's important to understand who is it that's talking to you, and what is it that qualifies me to be able to share this information with you. I've lived a couple of different professional lives. I've worked in schools, I've worked in human services, I've created programs, I've worked in programs, and one of my jobs along the way was also to go to programs and kind of help them get up to speed. If you've ever seen the show Restaurant Impossible with Robert Irvine, I used to go to programs all over the state of Pennsylvania for one of the companies that I worked for, and I would help them kind of get up to speed and work with them to improve their services. Why that's important is because I've seen a lot of different kinds of programs for this population. I've seen good ones, I've seen bad ones, I've seen when it goes right, and I've seen when it goes completely wrong. And I'm bringing all that experience to building programming. One of the things that I had shared with our co-host before we got started was just this week, I've been tapped to work with the College Autism Network as a member of their board. And what that means is that I'm going to be working with colleges all over the country on how to develop this type of programming and what the philosophy of this type of programming should be. My belief is that we should be fostering independence, self-advocacy, and accountability for our neurodivergent students, providing them with the ability to do things on their own, because I think that up to this point, many of the students that I've encountered have spent a great deal of their academic life with their parents doing most of the work for them. And understandably so, because sometimes in order to get what you need, you have to advocate. But my students, I want them to leave Chestnut Hill College not only with a degree, but I want them to leave with the skills that they're going to need to be successful professionals and adults. So a little bit of what I'm going to bring you through in this presentation is, what is it you should be looking for? What are the things that you should look for in these types of programs if you're looking for a program for your students, for your loved one, for your child? What are the things that these programs should have? And what are the things that are hallmarks of good college support programs for students on the spectrum? So what is it that you should be looking for? So when we define neurodivergent students, we're saying students that are on the spectrum, they may be on the spectrum, they may have ADHD, dyslexia, or some other sort of cognitive differences. So you should be looking for colleges that prioritize inclusivity, and they have tailored support to help students thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. So at Chestnut Hill, we emphasize what's called the AISE model. And this was originated at not Mercy Hurst University, I just noticed that typo, Mercyhurst University in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I was very fortunate to know a man whose name was Brad McGarry. And he started the program at Mercyhurst University. He has since passed. And he was kind of the gold standard for these types of programs, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. And the AISE model is one that we are utilizing because when we started our research on developing these programs, Brad was so incredibly gracious with his time and with his knowledge. It wasn't about, I created this and it's mine. It was about, I created this and I want to use this to make this better, not just for the Mercyhurst students, but for all students across all colleges. And I'm very grateful for that because, you know, this community is a giving community. And it's a group of people that really are in it to help students. And this is why I love going to the College Autism Network conference every year, because it's a group of like-minded people that are all trying to do the same thing and work together. So me bringing these different things that you should be looking for in a college program is kind of a cobbling of all of these different schools and all of these different folks that I've talked to. And I've really tried to take the best parts of all of these different schools and put them together to create something innovative at Chestnut Hill. So we have two distinct programs. The first one being the Neurodiversity College program, which is self-identified neurodivergent undergraduate students seeking a college degree with supports. So these students go through the regular admissions process. They are onboarded by myself and the Assistant Director of Neurodiversity Initiatives, and we provide them with supports that I will go throughout the presentation. And then we have another program that I had mentioned that we are launching in January of 2026 for 21 and older adults with intellectual developmental disabilities and co-occurring autism spectrum disorder, seeking life skills, vocational training, and family supports. They are motivated to work and live independently or interdependently. One of the most important pieces of this for me and the philosophy of this initiative is I want to make sure that it's the individual's idea to be in a program. I've worked with a lot of folks in my career where it was very clear to me that the individual did not want to be in a particular program or receive a particular service, but they were kind of pushed into that by their families or their caregivers because they needed something. And one of the things about this population, the 21 plus crew, is that once individuals hit 21 and 22 and they stop going to school, the choices that they have are so incredibly limited that the state of Pennsylvania has told us they want this program open yesterday because there are just too many folks who don't have opportunities that need them. And in this particular case, during the pandemic, so many community-based employment programs folded because during COVID, you couldn't go in the community and you couldn't go to your job. So most of those programs don't exist anymore. So we are trying to create more opportunities for this population because we see the need, and the state of Pennsylvania sees the need as well. So what are the things that you want to look for, and what should be the hallmarks of a program for students with learning needs at the college level? The first thing you want to look for is what are the support services that are being provided? And there's two things. There are accommodations, and then there's proactivity. So let's talk about accommodations for a brief moment. So at Chestnut Hill, when a student comes to us, we typically receive all of their documentation. We get psychoeducational testing, we get IEPs and 504s, pretty much anything that is going to help us determine what a student's needs are going to be. One of the unique features of our program at Chestnut Hill is we do not require a diagnosis. We do not require a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. We do not require a psychoeducational test that has a diagnosis at the end of it. We do need that information, but it is not a requirement of acceptance into the program. So we are building accommodation plans for students based on what are the services that they were receiving at the secondary level, and what is it that is in their documentation that we can utilize to make sure that they're receiving their accommodations. So this past year, we have 25 students in our Neurodiversity College program. When I took over in July, I went through all of their accommodation plans from before. I went through all of their psychoeducational testing, and I built their accommodation plans from scratch. Now, I can do that with 25 students. If we got any bigger than that, probably not. But that is a little bit of an indication of the type of one-to-one attention that a student gets. Making sure that there are things directly in their accommodation plan that comes right out of their psychoeducational testing so that these things connect. So you want to make sure that whatever college or university you're looking at, they provide accommodations. And these are just a couple. Extended time testing, quiet environments, assistance with note-taking, and access to assistive technology. So we spell out in our accommodation plan what a student needs, and then we take those accommodation plans and we send them to that student's professor. So the faculty have copies of these accommodation plans, and we can kind of work together if needed. Accommodation plans here at Chestnut Hill, these are living and breathing documents. They can change at any time. If a student starts the school year and they have an accommodation, it's not working for them, or they recognize that they need more accommodations, we work with to try to address that. And you want to look for colleges that actively engage students in their accommodation and provide ongoing check-ins. Over the summer, when we were creating these accommodation plans, I met with all of the students face to face or on Zoom or on Teams, and we went through their accommodation plan line by line to make sure that they were comfortable with it. Because I want to make sure, I don't want to send something, create something, put anyone's name on something that they don't sign off on first. That's the beginning of that self-advocacy piece. That's the beginning of that accountability. So when we get to November and a student says, I needed this accommodation and you all didn't give it to me, we go back to, we have discussed this literally since the summer. And I need you to stand up and say, this is what I need. Providing ongoing check-ins. We meet with the students each once a week. So myself and the assistant director each have a caseload of students. I meet with my caseload of students every week, and we review what's going on in their courses. I kind of just go through that AISE piece. How are things going in your academic life? How are things going in your independent living life? And what type of social and emotional support is it that you need? Sometimes we talk for 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 30 to 45. It all depends on what the student's needs are at that particular time. I've had students just pop their head in and say, look, everything's going great. I just wanted to kind of check in with you. It's just an opportunity to get eyes on them as well. You know, it's harder to hide when you're actually face to face. Before I took this position, I was the director of a graduate program that was completely online. And if a student wanted to disappear, they could, because they're online students. They're not on campus. You don't see them in the hallway. They don't stop by your office. So at least with my students, I'm able to kind of get up and walk around campus, see them, you know, and kind of meet them where they are, you know, chat with them outside or in the cafeteria or grabbing coffee. So you want to make sure that whatever program you're looking for, you want to make sure that the students are actively engaged with the staff members. So what are the academic resources that are provided to the students? So we want to think about what kind of tutoring and learning support is there. So are there centers for writing, math, and study skills? And people who are trained to support diverse learning needs. So here at Chestnut Hill, we have a writing center, we have a math center, and we have a literacy specialist that specializes in study skills. So these are pre-existing resources of the college. So these are not exclusive to the neurodivergent students. This is part of the already existing infrastructure of the college. But we utilize these services with our students, and we talk with our staff members about, you know, the importance of making sure that they're utilizing the accommodation plan when they're helping our students with writing, math, or whatever study skills that they're struggling with. And then we want to make sure we have academic advisors that are familiar with the challenges that neurodivergent students face. So here at Chestnut Hill, we work very closely with the faculty advisors to make sure that we get a good understanding of what kind of course load students can handle, what kind of majors that students can go into. I do have to say, one of the advantages that we currently have is that we have a former faculty member as the director of this program, which is me. So I have a good understanding of what it is the role of the faculty member is, because I was just doing it. So that's a little bit of a unique perspective. That's not something you're going to get all the time, but it's something that works for us here at Chestnut Hill, because I'm able to go to my faculty colleagues and talk with them a little bit about our students. Funny enough, my office is still in the same place it was before, so I'm literally right smack in the middle of most of the faculty. So it's actually a very easy opportunity for me. I had a student come in this morning, and she needed to meet with her academic advisor, who was literally in the office next to mine. So we were able to talk. I walked next door with her. The three of us were able to talk. Is this opportunity everywhere? We're lucky here at Chestnut Hill because we're a small community. But the other piece of this is, when you're looking for supports for students, or you're looking for a program for your student or your child, these are the kinds of things you're going to weigh. Do I want a large college or university, Do I want a small community-based college or university? One of the things that I've really been lucky with is collaboration with other colleges and universities in the area. And the best thing about it is we're not really competing. Us, Westchester, Drexel, Gwynedd, St. Joe's, we all do something a little bit different. If you want big city community, you go to Drexel or you go to Westchester. If you want small community based, you come to us. If you want something in the middle, you end up at St. Joe's or Gwynedd. And the idea is that we're kind of all working together to get better. We talk to each other all the time at all these different places. And again, we go to meetings and conferences and people that do my job all over the country. We get together and we talk about how to make these programs better. So I think that, when you're looking for a school for a student with neurodivergent diagnoses, you really want to think about what it is you're looking for as far as size and scope and things of that nature. And what are the social supports? Is there a peer mentoring program where we pair neurodivergent students with mentors to help them navigate college life? This is something we are building here at Chestnut Hill. Our college program is now in its third year, second official year. So we had a pilot year 2 years ago with just a couple of students. And then we started to admit larger cohorts in the last 2 years. The peer mentoring piece is something that I'm looking to build, but I don't have as many upperclassmen just yet. We're kind of getting there. I kind of do it unofficially a little bit. I do have one student in particular who is just utterly amazing. And I remember going to him and I had a student who was struggling a little bit socially and just saying to him, like, can you kind of like little brother this guy a little bit? Kind of bring him in, make him feel like he belongs and things of that nature. So you want to think about, is there peer mentoring opportunities? And there's two types of peer mentoring. There's neurodivergent with neurodivergent students, and then there's neurodivergent with neurotypical students. So those two types of peer mentoring exist in different types of programs. And then what kind of social skills programs are there? Do we have workshops and groups focused on building social skills and making connections? Here at Chestnut Hill, we have a group called the NeuroSpicy Network. And this is a group of students, some neurodivergent, some not, who all work together to create social opportunities for students. So they have an event every Friday during the school year. They plan it themselves. They decide what the events are. And myself and the assistant director try to provide as much support as we can. But we have to remember too, like many of these students, they're adults. Like I have no problem leaving a group of 20, 21-year-olds in a room, painting pumpkins or watching a movie or whatever the case may be. But we provide social skill opportunities for our students to meet each other and then kind of branch out from there. I've told our students when they're struggling socially, like we have our little group, right? And that's kind of where you start. And then if you want to build and branch out and things of that nature from there, you can. But we've built in a social network for our neurodivergent students so they are able to learn a little bit about each other and learn a little bit about what their social needs are as well. And then you want to think about what the campus environment is. Is it a culture of acceptance? I had mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that I want to create a culture here at Chestnut Hill. This is an initiative. It's not a program. So we want to celebrate diversity and inclusivity. We want to think about student organizations or awareness campaigns for neurodiverse students, and it's a supportive environment. We're partnering with the Philadelphia Eagles to create a college program for the Eagles Autism Network. One of the things that we are doing is creating that group with any student who's interested. It's not just neurodivergent individuals, it's any student who's interested in learning more about supporting individuals with learning needs and neurodiverse students. You want to think about what are the sizes of the classes. And you want to think about more personalized attention. Do you want to send your child to a school that's big? Maybe. Maybe it's good for them. Do you want to send your child to a school that's a little bit smaller? So you want to take a look at that and recognize, what kind of environment that student would be best with. And then you want to think about flexible policies. Are there online options or hybrid classes or who are the faculty? Are the faculty people who are open to working with students with learning needs and neurodiverse needs? Have this faculty been trained? Do they have a dedicated program? for neurodivergent students? And are those folks working with faculty members to ensure that they know how to support this population in the classroom? So these are questions that you want to ask when you're looking for a program for your students. When we talk about housing options, here at Chestnut Hill, we do offer some housing accommodations if possible. We want to look for setups where we consider sensory sensitivities. Are there quiet spaces or single rooms available? Our students in our program can apply for housing accommodations. Typically, they do receive them because we have space. We have students that need to be in a single room because they need to be able to have that area to unplug and kind of be on their own. We've had students that have requested their own bathroom because that seems to be an issue with, social things and things of that nature. So you want to see if there's any kind of living accommodation that's available for the student as well. What are the career preparations? So we want to talk about internship supports, and we want to talk about career centers. Does the program help neurodivergent students secure internships or jobs? Is there any sort of training, workplace communication, and self-advocacy? And the idea of, is there a career services office? Do they interface with the neurodivergent students? Our career services office here at Chestnut Hill, they do a great job working with our students. They do a workshop for our students once a month. We've done resume building. We've done applying for internships. We've done how do you dress and how do you act in a job interview. They're really hands-on with helping us secure internship opportunities and jobs for our students. And what are the skills that the students are going to need when they go out into the workplace? And then, do we have knowledgeable staff about the unique strengths and needs of the neurodivergent students? And I'll add to that. What is the campus community doing to work with this population of students? What kind of professional development workshops are provided to faculty and staff to help understand the unique needs of this population? Here at Chestnut Hill, we've done a very deliberate job of training our faculty, our staff, our support staff, dining services, security, athletics, residence life. And we're re-upping our workshop series for this next year to provide our faculty with supports in the classroom, to provide our support staff with supports on how to work with this population of students, because it's not just in the classroom. College is a residential facility. It's all day, every day when the students are here. So if neurodivergent students are living on campus, they're part of a community, and they're going to interface with people in the cafeteria and at athletic events and security guards and residence life folks in the dorms. All of those individuals have to have a working knowledge of an individual's needs and what it is that they can do to make a situation better for a neurodivergent student. So you want, in addition to, is the campus inclusive for neurodivergent individuals? You want to think about what kind of workshops and professional development has been done for these folks. That's a question you could ask. How do you train your faculty and staff to work with neurodivergent students? They should be able to answer that question, because any school that is accepting into a program neurodivergent individuals, there should be some sort of training protocol for the people that are going to be working with them, directly and indirectly. So what are health and wellness options? Are the therapists and counselors experienced in supporting neurodivergent students? And do students have access to quiet rooms, sensory-friendly spaces for de-escalation or relaxation? We have a dedicated space for our program here at Chestnut Hill. We call it the Neurodiversity Library. It's a space where we do academic coaching every day for 2 hours. It's a space where students can go any time of the day to do work or just relax quietly, and it's open all the time. We leave the door unlocked so the students can go in there after hours, on the weekends. I actually just recommended to one of my students today because he said he's having a really hard time motivating himself to do his work when he's in his dorm room because, all the distractions are there, the TV and the video games and the music and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, we have a quiet space downstairs that you can go and do your work. And it's good and it feels good to be able to say that and not just say, well, good luck. Or sometimes going places like a student activity center or the library or the cafeteria to do work is not the most sensory friendly space for a neurodivergent person. So to have a dedicated space for our students to be able to say, this is a dedicated space that you can go and do some work quietly is important for those students to be able to recharge a little bit. And then what are the transition options for the students? So we here at Chestnut Hill, we're working on building an orientation session for our neurodivergent students. When this program was built several years ago, it was supposed to include a summer bridge program. And so I built this program a couple years ago. Someone else took it over, and now I'm back in charge of this program. So kind of working on developing some of the things that we were going to do at the beginning. And one of those things is a summer bridge because we want to have our students come on campus, maybe take a class, maybe work a little bit with, learning the campus and learning how to do things on their own while there's not everybody here. We do have a program that does that, but it's not exclusive to our neurodivergent students. It's open to all students. So it's a larger population, and I want to work on creating something for just our students to be able to get here and get some time on campus. And then some schools do offer semester-long transition programs where they're focusing on executive functioning, time management, and social skills in conjunction with academics. So it's like you take a smaller course load, but you're also working on these types of things at the same time. That's not something that exists in all programs, but it exists in some. So, that's a question you might want to ask if you feel like your student needs something like that in order for them to be able to transition into college seamlessly. And then what about communication and advocacy? You want to look for staff responsiveness, and self-advocacy resources. Are faculty and staff accessible? Is there open dialogue? And are they receptive to individual needs? I try to make myself, as the director of this program, as accessible as possible to my students, to their families, to the faculty. If you call me on the phone, I answer the phone. If you email me, I email you back. You don't just send it into the ether and somebody gets back to you eventually. This program is my responsibility. So I need to make sure that whatever's going on in this program, I'm here to address. And I'm here to encourage open dialogue. And I am receptive to the individual needs of my students. So you want to see, are the people working in the program accessible? And are the faculty accessible to the students? One of the things that we're really trying to work through here at CHC, and I mentioned it at the very beginning, is creating that culture in this program of advocacy, accountability, and the idea of independence for students. We are trying to get our students to reach out to their faculty members on their own. We're trying to encourage students to set up appointments and tutoring and all these things on their own. Now, we, of course, will step in if things are not getting taken care of. I had a student today who reached out to the Center for Accessibility and Learning Services for tutoring and wasn't hearing back. I stepped in and I answered that, and I responded to that email because at that point, I tried to have the student kind of do this on their own, but now I want to make sure that they actually get the service that they need in order to be successful. So you'll want to provide them with the opportunity to advocate for themselves, but do so in a safe way, right? You don't want to just say, okay, sign up for tutoring, and if they never hear anything, be like, well, you probably should have followed up. You know what I mean? Like giving them the sense to be able to do it on their own. But we're also here as that safety net because a lot of what we do in our program is executive functioning coaches, right? Like I'm not a tutor. I'm not going to tutor you in chemistry, but my job is to be able to point you in the direction of how to get one. And one of the things, I bring a unique blend of being a counselor and being a case manager and being a director and being a parent and being a faculty member and being a therapist and all those things, right? But that's not my job here. My job here is to oversee this program and ensure that my students get to the resources that they need. I try not to overstep those roles because we have other people here that do those things. I'm not going to perform counseling on these students because we have a counseling center. I'm not going to academically advise these students because each one of them has a faculty academic advisor. Even though I know how to do it, even though I know I could step in and fix it, I want the student to be able to do these things on their own. It's not like being a parent. You want to do things for your children, but at a certain point, you got to back out a little bit and let them do it on their own, again, in a safe way, right? We're not going to let a student fail just to learn self-advocacy skills. But the idea that we want to try to give them as much opportunity to do things on their own as we can so that they learn those independent skills. They learn how to be resilient. And we want to make sure that there are opportunities for the students to learn how to advocate for their needs confidently. And that's a little bit of what I'm trying to instill in these students. So you want to think about when you send a student to a support program, is independence and accountability part of it? Or do they just do everything for the students? There are some programs that do that. And I don't necessarily agree with it because I don't think it puts the students in a position to be successful after they graduate. So it's just something you want to think about when you're looking into different kinds of programs. So I'm going to give you these 3 questions, and then I'm going to come back and we can chat for a second. You can ask questions, then I'll talk about the life skills program. These are 3 questions you want to ask yourself when you're navigating what are the next steps for my neurodivergent student. Does the college have a dedicated neurodiversity center or initiative? Do they just have a center for accessibility and learning, or do they just have a disability services center that provides basic accommodations? Or do they actually have a program for neurodivergent students or an initiative? How do faculty members accommodate diverse learning styles? These are questions that you should ask when you're looking for a program for your student. People who are running these programs should be able to answer that question. They should be directly involved in teaching faculty how to accommodate diverse learning styles. And are there clubs or organizations specifically for neurodivergent students? Like I mentioned, we have our Neurospicy group. We have our Eagles Autism group. These groups are open to all students, and we also have our neurodivergent student group that plans events and does things together as well. So we want to think about, are there opportunities for neurodivergent students to be able to have some social connection in a way that provides them with the opportunity to do some things, meet some people, and things of that nature. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm going to let everybody stretch for a brief moment. And maybe just stop and ask if anybody has any thoughts, questions, anything that they want to share. They say anything that kind of rustled some things up for you. Doesn't have to. I just wanted to give people an opportunity at this point.
I never thought about asking the question about the faculty.
Okay, explain.
So I would think to myself, is there some sort of programming available? What does that look like? But I never thought to ask the question, what does your training look like? How does your, how are you supporting our diverse learners? Like, give me the specifics with what you're going to do. I just didn't think to ask a question like that on the tour.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that we want to make sure, obviously, is that there is some sort, maybe the people do know specifically, right? Like if you ask me that question, I would be able to answer it for you. I'd be able to tell you what it is we do for our faculty because honestly, I'm the one doing it, right? So larger schools, sometimes that's not the case, right? But the fact that we are a small community, right? Like we're kind of like that small town where like the sheriff is also the person working at the supermarket cash register, right? Like we wear a lot of hats. So the idea that, we have an understanding of these things on the ground because we're doing most of them ourselves, right? But you want to know, is there a training program for faculty? Because we don't want our students to go into the classroom and have people that don't know how to support their needs. One thing that I think is a really important piece of information about college faculty, not every one of them is an educator. Not every one of them went to college for education. They're not all teachers. Some of these folks are subject matter experts who are now sharing that information in a classroom setting, but they're not necessarily trained as teachers. Something that you may or may not know. And when you're working with individuals who they didn't learn about pedagogy, they didn't learn about special education, they didn't learn about accommodations and things of that nature, they had to be taught. One thing that I learned becoming a faculty member is that, maybe I'm a little bit of a unicorn because I have the education background, I have the practitioner background, and now, I was a faculty member. Some of these people have been just teaching their discipline since they left their doctoral work. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that you're going to send your child to college and every single person that's going to teach them is a teacher is an incorrect notion. And the idea that we at the college, right, when we're working with individuals with neurodiverse needs, we want to make sure that those people are supported in the things that they need to do in the classroom to best reach those learners, right? So, again, we want to get an understanding of how that support is being provided. I mean, I'm going to get people in trouble now on tours, right? All of you are going to start going on tours, and people are going to be like, why are they asking these questions? So, but no, it's an important question. It's a question I would ask. Like if I was taking my son or daughter on a college tour, I'd want to know the answer to that question if they were neurodivergent. My oldest daughter has dyslexia. When we go look at colleges for her, I want to know what support, and good luck trying to explain it to me on a tour, right? But the idea that I want to know what kind of supports are going to be available for her, because I don't want to put time, energy, and resource into an experience that's not going to be successful for her. So these are just some things to think about as a parent or, as a counselor, as a teacher, whatever role it is you're playing with an individual student. What do you look for in order to provide students with the best possible opportunity to be successful? Other thoughts, questions on that piece of what we talked about? Is there anything, and there's more, is there anything I did not address with regard to, what it is you should be looking for or what kind of programming there is? All right. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I guess it means I just did a good job. So
You were very comprehensive.
I tried. All right, I'm going to jump back into this. I'm going to talk very briefly about our life skills program. And then I'm going to, I have a list of questions that were provided. I'm going to try to answer those to make sure, again, if somebody watches this later and they submitted a question, I want to make sure that that's answered. And then I'm going to open it up and we can do a little bit of Q&A and just try to provide as much of a guide as I can in this space as we navigate this. Because again, the next step for a student with neurodiverse needs can be incredibly stressful, regardless of what role you play in that student's life. If you're the parent, if you're the counselor, if you're a teacher, you have an invested interest in that student's success, and you want to be able to have the information to be able to point them in the best direction so that they land at a place that's going to be a good fit for them. All right, so let me jump back in here real quick. Hold on. Stand by. Okay. Oh. Okay. So let's talk about the life skills program very briefly. What is the population we're looking to serve? How is it being funded? And what is the goal of that program? So, as I mentioned before, 21 and over adults, intellectual developmental disability, co-occurring autism spectrum disorder. And these are high-functioning individuals, which is a term that I absolutely hate, but I'm going to use because that's the term we currently use. These individuals are ambulatory, which means they can get around on their own, whether it's on foot, with assistive devices, in a wheelchair, whatever the case may be. And they are employment-seeking participants looking to live independently. So again, they are motivated to learn the skills and be able to live on their own and support themselves. Because again, so much of the stress related to individuals in this population is for the caregivers. What's going to happen to my loved one when I can no longer take care of them? And we want to provide people with the opportunity and the ability to be able to support themselves. So the funding for this program, and this is one of the biggest questions I get, because one of the concerns about a program like this is what's it going to cost? Now, the idea from an access and an equity point of view for a program like this is that individuals in this population typically have funding through the state of Pennsylvania. They apply for funding through Office of Developmental Programs, and that funding is approved. And then they can take that funding to whatever their provider of choice is. Now, in this case, they would choose us as their provider of choice. So we at Chestnut Hill, we are becoming a licensed provider of services for the state of Pennsylvania. So that means that we are going to be able to bill the state of Pennsylvania directly for the services that we are providing, and the families are not going to be responsible for that. So again, from an access and equity point of view, we want to make sure that it's not just people who could afford to pay out of pocket for this. It's people who can apply for funding and receive it and use that funding to come to us as their provider of choice. We're about 60% of the way through the licensure process, right? I mean, I am 60%. Nobody else is getting credit for that because I'm doing it. But the idea of we've gone through a pre-orientation phase, which is I had to do 6 asynchronous modules on creating programming and the vision and the values of this concept called everyday lives in the state of Pennsylvania, and the philosophy that we want individuals to be able to live a life of choice. I then am going to go to a 2-day seminar where I learn more things, take another test. I had to take tests at the end of each one of these modules too, and my goodness, taking a test as a grown-up and taking a test as a kid, 2 completely different things. I'm sitting here, I'm clicking on buttons and I'm sweating when I'm going to submit all my answers. Like it was intense. But the idea that we're going to be able to become a licensed provider and we're going to be able to accept funding from the state of Pennsylvania at that point. And the program goal is that individuals would complete a 24-month vocational life skills, family systems, and supports program. So those are the 3 services that we are combining together. Vocational training, so individuals come to us, they provide to us what their career of choice would be. We help them develop that skill. We teach them the skills necessary to live independently. And we also support their families and their caregivers, whether it's through supports in education, whether it's family systems therapy, but the idea that we want to send people back out into the world with the support of their support circle and be able to educate those folks. So we want to be able to have people live independently or interdependently and provide resources to families and caregivers so they can support the person once they leave the program. So what are the unique program features? Vocational training, life skills development, family systems therapy, and supports in a college community. When we created this program, we did not know that no one has combined these 4 things. There are some programs that do 1 of them, 2 of them. The Office of Developmental Programs shared with us that this does not exist currently in the state of Pennsylvania. So, number 1, we were shocked by that. Number 2, of course, we're telling everyone that now because that's been externally validated by the state of Pennsylvania. So what are we doing in each one of these areas? Vocational training focuses on identifying what is called one's greatest skill. So the skill or passion is going to be identified and fostered so that the individual can develop the tools needed for a career of their choice. Somewhere along the way, when we started creating programs for vocational situations for developmentally disabled adults, we decided there's 3 or 4 jobs these folks can do. They could push a broom, they could empty trash, they could wipe a table, they could fill napkin dispensers, and that's about it. We want to make sure that individuals are doing jobs that they want to do. And I will tell you, if a person comes to our program and says it is their life's dream to push a broom, we will help them do that. But we want to make sure that the career that the individual is choosing is something that they feel comfortable doing and they want to do and they have the skills to do. We're not telling them what they can do. And in some of the programs I've worked in before, we're telling people, we have these couple of jobs and you can do these couple of jobs. And seemingly, you would look at that and say, well, hey, those folks have jobs. That's great. And it is to a certain degree. But it's not what their choice is. We want them to come to us and we want to learn what their passion is. We want to develop life skills, tools for independent or interdependent living. So we want to develop an individual's ability to participate in what we call activities of daily living. shopping, cleaning, cooking, and personal finance is a big one because we want an individual to be able to sustain for the rest of their lives. We want them to be able to work. We want them to be able to understand what it is that they're making and how to make it turn into different types of things that they need. And the goal is for the individual to be able to learn to support themselves with dignity. And that's something that's going to reduce the stress of their caregivers because these individuals will then have an avenue to be able to take care of themselves as their families and caregivers age. And our goal is not only to support the individuals in the program, but also the family and caregivers. So when our individuals move out of our program after 2 years, their support system has to be in place so that they can succeed and prosper. All of these individuals need a support circle. So we want to be able to provide this type of support so we can provide education and tools for that individual support circle, increasing the potential for sustainable success after they leave our program. And then college community. The individuals in this program, they will be members of the Chestnut Hill College community, and they're going to have access to all of the events and resources and facilities that is going to make their journey unique. They can eat in our cafeteria. They can go to a basketball game. They can use our gym. They can use our library. They are part of our community. So we want to make sure that these individuals have that unique experience to be able to be on a college campus. There's opportunity at some point in time if an individual wanted to audit courses and participate in the classroom, they could. The idea that we have students that may be able to work with the individuals in our program hands-on in education, in counseling, in social work, and all of these different opportunities to be able to do internships and practicums working with our program to learn how to work with this population. So what's the impact of our program? So the lives of the participants are going to be improved by providing them with skills to secure employment and independent living and have a support system that's familiar with strategies to fulfill their needs. And we want to identify their greatest skill and passion to be able to utilize that in choosing a career. So the short-term impact is we're increasing employable skills, understanding the concept of independent living, and the ability to be part of a community, not just at the college, but in the surrounding community as well. And then the long-term impact is the ability to support yourself and sustain a life of choice and dignity, and creating financial stability and the ability to live an independent life of their caregivers. Because again, this is a big piece with this population. As their caregivers grow older, what's going to happen to these folks? And that's a big source of stress for their families and caregivers throughout the course of their lives. So a lot of what we are looking to do is try to find ways for their loved ones to not have to care for them for the rest of their lives completely, but working in conjunction with them. And we want to maintain and sustain an independent life. We want people to be able to know how to go do things, be members of a community, get a job, take public transportation, go places, do things, be part of stuff. Because this population up to this point, as underserved as they are and have not been provided these types of skills in most environments, because programs like this, unfortunately, don't exist. And we want to try to create something that can not only have this kind of impact, but can be replicated and created other places. So I want to kind of wrap up this part of the conversation with how can you be best supportive of neurodivergent students, adults? What is it that you can do to be the best supportive for these individuals? Because doing too much sometimes can be counterproductive because we're not providing the opportunity for individuals to be able to learn through life experience. So this list is something that I hope everybody takes with them. And the idea of being able to best support an individual who's neurodivergent, to be able to provide them with the opportunity to live as independent a life as possible. You want to encourage self-advocacy. Being able to recognize when you need support and being able to verbalize that. I am driving that into my students right now. If you need help, you have to tell us. If something's going on, you have to share that. We cannot help you if we don't know. I had a student recently who was in the hospital. She disappeared for several days. We had no idea where she was. We found out later she was in the hospital. She didn't communicate that with anybody. Her professors, us, her success advisor, nobody. And when she got out of the hospital, obviously everybody tried to work with her as best as possible. But when I had a conversation with her, I said, listen, the most important piece of this is communication. We just have to know so that we can put stuff in place to be able to help you. And if you are not showing up to class, for example, and your only communication with your professor is you're not showing up, when you come back, there's going to be questions about where were you? You need to be able to communicate and advocate for things that you need. I've had students that have what I call struggling in silence, where they're having difficulty with something and they don't share that they're having difficulty because there's shame and frustration involved in that, and then they don't get the supports and resources that they need. So we want to create safe environments for students and individuals to be able to do that. As a parent, you want to stay involved, but you kind of want to respect boundaries. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes my phone rings and it's parents, and I don't answer the phone. Because at this point in a student's academic career, I don't need to be talking to their parents every day, every week. I encourage the students to talk to their parents. I want the student to tell their parents what's going on. If they call me on the phone and they ask me what grades are, A, I can't tell them because of FERPA. B, you tell them. Because that's a communication piece that needs to exist. So as a parent, stay involved. Don't fall off the face of the earth. But respect boundaries with staff, with faculty, and with your student. Don't email a faculty member about a student's quiz that they got a 0 out of 5 on. Don't do that. Number one, because they're not going to respond because they can't. And number two, that's not the kind of precedent that you want to set with regard to your level of involvement. You want to encourage the use of campus resources. Encourage the use of math centers and writing centers and counseling centers and literacy specialists and disability resource centers and career services. These offices exist to provide supports to your students. Encourage the use of those resources and frequently. This is the tough one, especially for parents. Supporting emotional resilience. Sometimes you kind of gotta let your student struggle a little bit. Again, in a safe way. You want to normalize struggle. You don't want to expect your student to show up at college and do everything perfectly all the time, especially if they're neurodivergent. There's going to be some struggles. There's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some difficulty. You want to normalize that. And you want to celebrate their progress. I try to celebrate progress with students all the time. What'd you get on that last quiz? How are things going? You went to an event and you stayed for half an hour. It's great. You have to adjust what your expectation of progress really is. If your student got all C's in their first semester in college and then they get all C pluses, that's progress. I had a student once, years ago, at a different school who was failing every class he was in, struggling mightily. And his average was like 30, 35 in just about every class. First semester, failed everything. Second semester, had 2 Fs and got his grades up to somewhere in the 60s, low 70s. And I remember sitting down with the parent being like, "His grades are terrible." And I said to them, your son doubled his average in every subject from one semester to the other. And if you're just looking at the letter grade, you're missing the progress. So you want to celebrate progress in big and small ways. And you have to expect challenges. They're going to occur. And how are you going to manage that? You want to provide support, but not too much. One thing, and this was a suggestion that I sent this list to my assistant director, and I said, these are the things I'm going to share with the group. And her suggestion was, when talking about providing support, but not too much, maybe starting in like second semester of senior year of high school, not doing everything for your kids. Make them get up in the morning by themselves. Make them make their own lunch. make them start to take some responsibility for themselves in small ways. Because once they go to college, they're not going to be looking around for somebody to do those things for them. They're going to self-start a little bit. I thought that was a good suggestion. Stay connected, build relationships with staff members in a positive way. That doesn't mean call them every day and ask them questions. I have positive relationships with the parents of the students in my program. The idea is that they know they can call me if they need something. And they also know that if I'm not getting back to them, it's because it's about something that I don't need to get back to them about. I told the parents at the beginning of the semester, trust me. Trust that if there's something that I need to talk to you about, I'm going to. And if I'm not talking to you about it, I'm not going to. You don't want to know everything that's going on with college students. Trust me. We'll decipher all of those different things and we'll share with parents things that they need to know. But you don't want to know. You don't want to know what I know. And the last piece, respect their journey. Because that's what it is. It's a journey. Your neurodivergent student has had difficulties and struggles, and you as a parent or a teacher or counselor may have had struggles and difficulties with that student too. If you're a parent, you've probably had to fight and scratch and claw for the things that your student has needed throughout the course of their academic and personal life. We get it. It's a lot. But the idea here is that you want to respect the opportunity for your student to be 19, 20, 21, 22 years old and go to college and learn from mistakes just like the rest of us did. And they'll have the supports in place to be successful as long as you do your due diligence and look for all the things that we talked about at the beginning of this thing. But the idea that you want to be able to respect their opportunity to learn also. Everybody here went to school of some kind, whether it was high school or college or graduate school or those crazy people on this call, like Jamie and I, who are doctors. Maybe we went to school for a really, really long time. We had the opportunity to be successful and fail and learn and struggle and succeed. And if you have a student who's neurodivergent, they may do that a little more often than a neurotypical student. But we want to provide them with the opportunity to be able to learn. Because when they leave college, they're going to have to get a job. They're going to have to support themselves. And we want them to have the tools to be able to do that. And if we don't ever let them do anything, if we don't ever let them spread their wings, they're not going to. So we have to provide them with the opportunity to do so in some capacity.
We have one question that came through.
All right.
Is there an academic component of this program? Assume not inclusive, correct? Is housing inclusive? So
Okay.
maybe just to clarify between the two programs,
Yeah.
and then what's in each one of them.
So talking about the college program, I'm assuming when you say is there an academic component of this program, you're probably talking about the other one. And it is housing inclusive. So very, very briefly on the college program, they are college students. They get accepted to the college. They choose to be in our program. They can live on campus. They can live at home just like any other student would. And it's part of their regular college experience. With regard to the life skills program, is there an academic component? There could be. We're looking to build what's called a comprehensive transition program, a CTP, which is a program where individuals that are developmentally disabled can take courses and apply them towards a certificate if they so choose. These are individuals that are not looking for a degree per se because this program is vocational in nature, but they can have an academic component to it if they so choose. And it says is housing inclusive? Not at this time. This is a day program. So they will come to Chestnut Hill from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. They'll live at home or they'll live in a community apartment or live with another provider or whatever the case may be. At some point, we may delve into the residential piece of things. That was the original plan. But at this point in time, it is strictly a day program.
And so just to clarify, and just so we're all on the same page, so the first program, the first part that you were talking about, the college program.
Yes.
Housing is included just as it is for every other student.
Correct.
You had mentioned that you guys work with the students about if they need accommodations for
Correct.
housing and things like that. So that's kind of camp to
Yep.
the left. And the life skills program is the vocational path day
Right.
program only, just making sure everyone's aware of the two different paths we were talking about.
Correct. And this is an important distinction. And having talked about these programs over and over and over again, this is something I picked up over time. There's not a path really between the two. So some people have said, oh, okay, my student can go to the college program, and then once they could then go to the life skills program after to get those things. They're kind of two very separate populations. One is, again, traditional degree seeking students who are looking to achieve a college degree. The other is individuals who are in the adult population who are looking to work a job and live on their own and things of that nature. Kind of same population, but just parallel roads, if you will. And they don't really intersect that much. One thing I'm going to do is I am going to bring up this list of questions that I had real quick. Hold on, I'm trying to put it on the other screen. It's not listening. All right.
Before you start, I got a direct question too.
Yeah.
It says, I know you are a Catholic college. How many of your students identify as non-Catholic? Our student is Jewish.
Okay. Yes, we are a Catholic college. I don't have a percentage or a number, but we accept students from all denominations at Chestnut Hill. So, if you're of a different denomination or non-denominational, it has no effect on your admission to the college just because it is a Catholic school. So, are there other direct questions from this group before I go through the other ones? And if you think about any questions between now and then, please feel free. I'm going to open it up when we're done, and people can kind of just share comments and things of that nature if need be. I'm not going to read this whole list because I think I did answer some of these in the presentation. What are the admissions criteria and the costs? That's a very good question. So the admissions criteria, and I'm going to assume that this is for the college program. The admissions criteria are the admissions criteria for the college. So students have to be admitted to the college first before we have a conversation about entering into the neurodiversity college program. So cost is typical tuition cost that would be found on our website for the cost of tuition at Chestnut Hill. On top of that, for the Neurodiversity College program, there is a $3,000 per semester fee to be included in the program, and that can be covered. Many of our students are set up with occupational and vocational rehabilitation, OVR. They cover a good bit of our students with regard to that fee, or students and families pay that fee, or that could be, in some cases, included in financial aid if the need is there. So admissions criteria is the college's admissions criteria. There's no special criteria. And then once the students apply to the college and are admissible, they get sent to us and we review their information. We usually have a conversation with the student and the family. And then if they're accepted into our program, we have an onboarding process the summer before the students would come to Chestnut Hill, where we go through, they give us an idea of what it is they're looking to do. We build their accommodations plan with them. We get all of their documentation so that we can go through it and get an understanding of what their needs are. And again, that extra cost is $3,000 per semester throughout the course of the time that individuals are in the program. Does Chestnut Hill provide students accommodations and support such as extra time? Yes, we do. How do colleges support students with IEPs? I can't speak on all colleges, but I can speak on here at Chestnut Hill. We receive IEPs, and as I mentioned before, it's very important to me. I go through them all for two reasons. Number one, I think it's important for me as the person who oversees this program to have a solid understanding of what a student's needs are, because I can't speak to faculty and our staff about what it is a student needs in the classroom. I don't understand. And two, again, I bring a special ed background where I'm going through an IEP and I'm looking for the pieces of it that are going to be most relevant to the student and their needs. So I think it's important to be able to understand it. Does every college go through every IEP that they're given, with a fine-tooth comb? I don't know, but I can tell you that I do, because I think that it's an important piece of what we do. Does every
Steve, can I,
college?
can I jump in for 1 second? So I
Yes,
think it's
please.
important too, just because we have some families with children that are younger. So the IEP process ends with high school. So when you take your diploma, you won't be, if you give your IEP to the colleges, you're not going to be working on goals. So it's super important to know that they're taking that document to see how they can support your student, not to see if they can work on their goals with them. So I think it's just super important to recognize the IEP ends as high school ends, and then you move forward into college.
No, that's a really good distinction. And again, that document is a guiding document for the college to be able to create accommodations. But no, we are not working on goals. We're not having meetings every year to go over those goals and things of that nature. It's a guiding document for us to be able to create an accommodation plan for your student. So yes, that's a really good distinction. Thank you for sharing that. Does every college have a department that helps students with disabilities receive the accommodations that they need? I'm going to be dead honest with you. I don't know if every single college has one of those dedicated offices. I don't think it's a requirement, but I don't know of any colleges that don't have one. So I've yet to go to a college or hear of a college that doesn't have one. But again, as I stated at the beginning of this talk, just because you have an Office of Disability Services doesn't mean it's resourced, doesn't mean that the resources are what I'm going to call good resources. The college or university has to put resources into that office in order to be able to provide the services that are going to be most successful for the students that are receiving it. What services are offered and what should we be asking for? So I can tell you what we offer, and it's relatively standard. And I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. We have a writing center, which provides supports to individuals for writing. We have a math center. We have a counseling center where we have 3 full-time therapists that are working here, and we have a couple of part-time folks. We have a career services center. We have a literacy specialist. And then we have our Center for Accessibility and Learning Services works with things like the extra time, making sure that those testing things are coordinated and things of that nature. And again, being Catholic school, we also have campus ministry if individuals are interested in something like that as well. How can students access tutoring and academic support? Students in our program, typically, they tell us. They let us know we need a tutor, we need extra academic supports, and we try to put those things in place for them. But again, fostering independence. I had a student sitting here with me today who said he needed a tutor, and I said, all right, take your laptop out, and I want you to email the Cal Center for Accessibility and Learning Services. I want you to email them. Copy me on it so that I get the response, but I want you to take the onus and the responsibility for doing that. So the students can access those things themselves. And again, if it starts to take a while or somebody's not getting back to us, like on the back end, like I'll jump in, I'll walk downstairs and I'll be like, hey, so-and-so reached out to you all. Can we get them a tutor? You know what I mean? Like, so I kind of give a little kick every now and again, but I really would prefer the students kind of doing that on their own. How does the college help students with social integration or campus life? I think I answered that. We have a lot of social events and things of that nature that we do for our group, but then we also try to encourage our students to go to other events as well. What resources are available to parents to support their students? Currently, we don't have a lot, and I don't think many colleges do. I think that we're really trying to move towards, when I say not supporting parents, I don't mean we're not trying to support you. But again, I think that we're really trying to encourage independence and accountability. At least that's what we're trying to do. Again, I tell parents when I speak to them that I'm going to provide you with as much information as I can. And I'm not telling you stuff, right? Like if something's an emergency, like we had a financial aid issue with a student last week where they were on a financial hold and they couldn't register for courses. And that was kind of messing up their OVR funding because they needed to send their course roster to OVR for the spring so that they could be funded. I did reach out to the family and say, hey, I need you all to get with student accounts and figure this out because it's keeping your son from being able to register for classes. So we do involve ourselves with parents sometimes when it's important, but regular run-of-the-mill things. I've had some conversations with the people in my department about trying to provide some supports for parents, because I think that sometimes, I mean, again, I'm a parent. I have 4 children at all varying ages. My oldest one just graduated from college, and my youngest one just went into high school. And then I have another college age son and another high school age daughter. So, like, I get it. I get that this is a stressful thing when we're trying to figure out what it is we want to do with our kids and what they're going to do next. And sometimes we need supports and guidance ourselves. I've thought about putting together some sort of parent group or something of that nature. It's something that we've kicked around a lot at the College Autism Network level, where we have people who do this job all over the country kicking around ideas to involve parents a little bit more, but it's a slippery slope, right? We want to involve parents as much as possible. But we also don't want to involve parents so much that it just becomes like an extension of high school. Does that make sense? Sandy, you had your hand up. Your actual hand, not a virtual hand.
Yeah, no, my actual hand, because you could see me now. Um, just in line with what you were saying and parent and involvement, have you considered, and I guess more for your life skills program, like person-centered planning, where the
Yeah.
student takes the lead, but
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
there's family and community partners that can come in and help guide the
Yeah.
goals?
We so the philosophy of the life skills program is centered around person-centered planning. And we want to create a team. And caregivers and families are going to be part of that team. And I think that the involvement with regard to the life skills program is a little bit different, because we're deliberately involving the family because we're providing them with family therapy and family supports. So it's a little bit of a different animal, right? Because again, we're trying to work with the families to be able to educate them on how to best support, that individual. I've thought about the idea of creating some sort of family situation with the college program where, kind of the same thing. Like, how do you best support your child, your neurodivergent child, while they're in college? And honestly, a lot of it has to do with the list that I shared, right? Like, these are the things that I would tell parents if we had a parent group. Like, these are the things that you should be doing. Like, be involved, but not too much. I mean, that's really the crux of it, right? Like, you want to be involved in your child's education, but you also don't want to find out that they're failing everything a week before the semester's over. There's a middle there, right? And again, like, so much of what I'm trying to do is work on communication between the student and the parents, because that's going to be the best way to keep parents involved, is for them to be involved with their student themselves, right? So we're kind of we're workshopping some of that stuff as well. So. Hold on. Does Chestnut Hill offer programming or support for developing life skills such as time management, budgeting, independent living? I'm going to assume that's probably related to the college program. Um, we are instituting a 1-credit course for the students in our program as well. They did it before. We removed it for this semester, and we decided we're going to put it back in the student schedules to be able to bring them together and work on those types of things. So yes, we are going to work on those life skills pieces with the college program students, so that they can get a better sense of, like, what are some of the skills that they're going to need when they graduate from college. Can the student in the life skills program take or audit academic courses? I did share that that's something that we're looking into being able to do, and we're looking to formalize that. If we become a comprehensive transition program, those individuals can actually get financial aid to be able to take courses at Chestnut Hill as well. Those would be the people in the life skills program. How does the college integrate life skills training into its academic or extracurricular programming? College-wide, we have a couple of courses that students can take on those types of things. We actually have a course that all students take when they come here called Welcome to CHC. And it's basically like, welcome to college. What are the things that you're going to need to know? What are the resources that are available to you? All those different types of things. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. When I left my last school job, we were creating some of that for the high school students, because I very quickly learned that many of these students had no idea how to do anything, outside of what was in their phone. So I think that part of what we want to do is we want to kind of go back to some of those hard life skills, right? Like, again, financial planning, transportation. I had a whole conversation with a group of students once, because none of them know how to get anywhere without a map in their phone. I had a conversation with my daughters the other day. We were driving somewhere, and I refused to use the map. because I wanted to figure out where we were going. And again, we had the time to be able to do that. Like, this wasn't like we were in a hurry and I'm just like, no. But you got to utilize those skills or you're never gonna be able to use them. Right. So it's like helping students, for example, like learn personal finance, not just like, okay, I'm going to put stuff into a spreadsheet and there it is. Like, what does it mean? What does credit mean? What do checks mean? What does credit cards mean? All those different kinds of things. So I think that college students, neurodivergent or neurotypical, need more education in those areas, across the board. It's something we're hoping to institute a little bit more. So that was the list of questions that I received. So I hope that if there's anybody that watches this later or couldn't be here tonight and is able to, watch this, if one of those questions was yours, I hope I was able to answer it to the best of my ability. I want to kind of open this up to whoever for thoughts, feelings, ideas, or anything anybody wants to share or ask related to anything that we just talked about.
Steve, while you take questions, I'm going to drop in the chat some information on our organization and how to keep in touch with us, and also an evaluation for tonight's program. And we ask, for other topics as well.
Thank you very much for sharing that you felt that this was informative. I appreciate that. I hope so. And one of the things that I'll say to Sandy and to Jamie, please provide my contact information, my email address and such, to this group and to whoever. I'm happy to follow up and answer questions that anybody has if you don't want to ask them in front of the group, or like everybody on earth, after the thing is over, you're like, damn it, I just thought of a question.
All right, we'll take a last call. Anybody for questions? All right. We will send out. Sandy, how do you do it? Do you want to put his contact information in the chat? Do you want to send it to everybody? What's best for you?
We can do that. You said you were going to share your PowerPoint?
Yeah, I think I did. Did I? I think I sent it to the two of you. And if I didn't, I can.
Okay. And I didn't check this afternoon, so you may have.
Okay.
But we can follow up with his contact information with the slide deck and the recording for
Perfect.
tonight to all the registrants.
And then you can send it however you'd like, but I am going to put it in the chat as well. If people, that is my email address.
Perfect.
If anybody would like to reach out with follow-up questions, or even better, is interested for, you want to come to campus, you want to learn a little bit more about what it is that we do. One of the things that we did talk about was trying to put together a group of folks that would come to campus in the spring for a tour. Did I just see somebody say they are a Chestnut Hill alum? All right, excellent. Good to see you. Once a Griffin, right? So the idea that, if you're interested or know anyone that's interested in coming and learning more about Chestnut Hill and our programming, we're going to put a group together in the spring, and I'm going to take people on a tour, do an info session, things of that nature. If you didn't get enough of me in this seminar, you can come visit me in the spring.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. This was wonderfully informative, and so transferable, as so many of our parents are going on these journeys and these tours with their students. Thank you so much for giving them some really thought-provoking things they can take with them on this next part of their journey. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you to our audience participants. We really appreciate your time tonight and being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. This was great.